With this, I'm most delighted to welcome my colleague Sonam to the panel. Sonam, you have the floor.
Excellencies, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning. It's actually afternoon now. First of all, on behalf of the Department of Environment and Climate Change, Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources, I would like to thank the JSW Law School for providing us this opportunity to be a part of this forum. Personally, I feel highly humbled and honored to be sharing the panel with two distinguished speakers. But then at the same time, it's rather than being exciting, it's more nerve-wracking to be presenting and talking on topics of which they are the true experts. Well, I am neither a climate change expert, nor am I a policy specialist, so I would like to seek apology if I fail to deliver justice to my presence and purpose at this session. So in my presentation, I will briefly share my personal opinion on how the 4 pillars of gross national happiness has become much more relevant in the face of a changing climatic system, then show how the principles of gross national happiness are embedded within the climate change policy in Bhutan, and then end with a few challenges that are hindering the implementation of climate change policy as well as climate change action in the country. Firstly, as evidenced by the earlier presenters today and yesterday, climate change is real and it's happening now, and we need to act now. So in order to ensure that there is effective mitigation adaptation to building resilience to climate change and ensuring that the global temperature rise is arrested below 2 degrees Celsius as enshrined under the Paris Agreement, and also to ensuring that there is adequate means of finance, technology, and capacity building, and then ensuring that no one is left behind in the fight against climate change, there is a need to ensure a very good system of governance that is effective, efficient, transparent, fair, and just above all. So the need for a good governance has become much more pertinent in the face of a changing climatic system, in my opinion. And in terms of environmental conservation, I mean, human survival on Earth actually depends on a healthy and a functioning natural systems. So that is the fundamental basis on which humans survive on Earth. But then in the face of climate change, all the ecosystems, both man-made as well as natural systems, are being affected adversely, and these systems are highly sensitive to a changing climatic regime. And as evidenced by the earlier presenters, the extreme events caused by climate change are becoming more intense, more frequent. And also it's only the nature that serves as sink for carbon, which is the primary cause of climate change. Therefore, now the need to ensure that the natural systems are protected and against a changing climate regime has become much more important than ever. And coming to the preservation and promotion of culture, a sad reality of climate change impact is the displacement of communities, resulting in loss of cultural ways of life, loss of social practices, festive events, etc. And also the heritage sites of cultural and traditional importance are not spared by impact of climate change. And then again, there is this nexus of science and cultural beliefs. A very good example is the forecasting, weather forecasting. We at the national, for instance, in Bhutan, the National Center for Hydrology and Meteorology, they provide seasonal forecasting for farmers to inform their harvesting and sowing times. But then again, there is this astrological way of forecasting the weather, seasonal forecast, as well as astrologically they even do an annual forecasting of weather. So when there is a mismatch, I mean, how do you actually convince the people to believe more in science when they have been following the culture way for thousands of years? So I mean, there is a need to achieve a balance, strike a balance between the science and the cultural way of life. So in the face of climate change, I mean, how do we now protect these cultural ways of life, the culture? It has become much more pertinent than ever again. And sustainable socio-economic development. Now, the key to addressing climate change is to ensure that we consume less, we produce less, basically ensuring there is sustainable consumption and production. And climate change impacts everyone, and the most vulnerable are the poor. So now, when you, in the fight against climate change, with the idea of not leaving anyone behind, we need to ensure there is economic progress. So now, to striking a balance with economic progress, ensuring sustainable development, not leaving anyone behind. I mean, striking this balance has become much more pertinent in the face of a changing climate regime. Now, coming specifically to the climate change policy of the Kingdom of Bhutan 2020, as indicated by the vision statement, I mean, the gross national happiness is very much well embedded within the policy objectives. It's actually the fundamental objective of the policy is to achieve gross national happiness in the face of a changing climate regime. So this is an illustration of how well the pillars of gross national happiness are embedded within the climate change policy, how the objectives are linked to each pillars of the gross national happiness, and also how the pillars respond to ensuring that effective implementation of the policy objectives. Lastly, coming to the challenges of implementation, not just of the climate change policy, but of climate action in particular. So being a least developed country as we are, we have highly limited means of implementation, both all in terms of finance, capacity, technology. We do not have adequate technology, we do not have adequate finance, nor do we have adequate capacity to ensure that we pursue a low carbon and a climate resilient developmental pathway in the country. And the next challenge that I personally feel is how best do we ensure collaboration, support, and participation across all sectors. Now, climate change impacts everyone. No one is spared from the impacts of climate change. Who are the stakeholders now? Is it just the government that's the stakeholder in the climate change, or is it just the private sector? Now, when you talk about climate action, it's the whole of the society approach that we need to take in combating climate change. So the challenge here is how do we bring everybody up to on the same tables, at the same level of understanding, with the same level of motivation to actually combat climate change. Because as we know, not every section of the society is interested in the debate of climate change. There are many people who are more interested in making profits rather than protecting the nature, the environment. So I mean, there is a struggle in terms of ensuring that everybody feels the need to adapt to a changing climate system, where everybody takes ownership of protecting the environment, reducing the emissions and foregoing consumption and reducing production in the process. So the striking a balance between development and adapting to climate change, as well as making sure that everybody is on the same page so that there is concerted effort to achieve meaningful adaptation and resilience to climate change, I feel is the biggest challenge of our time today. So with this, I end my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention.